Morning, I'm Sarah Bean, editor of FMJ, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar, taking a unified approach to adopting AI and FM. Eptura's 2025 Workplace Index suggests that over a third of employers are proactively looking to increase office attendance, which could result in a rise in the use of AI and cross-platform data analytics to help manage FM operations. The research warns, however, that rather than a dearth of platforms, there may be too many solutions available, meaning disconnected workplace systems preventing workplace managers from making informed business decisions. Today's webinar brings together software experts from Eptura, a smart workplace FM provider, and two client-side FMs to discuss how organisations can create a better balance. I'll be putting a series of questions to the panel, but would also love your input. So please do post any queries or comments or your own experiences, and we'll get to them towards the end of this session. Right, I'd like to go to the panel themselves and ask them to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Brian.
Thank you, Sarah. My name's Brian Cooper. I'm the VP Brand and Creative. One of my remits at Eptura is to publish the sort of our annual or biannual workplace index report, which I do with Sarah, who'll introduce herself in a short while. And from that report, we use our sort of proprietary and commissioned research to look into the sort of insights of what's going on in workplace operations and facilities management around the world, and to give people insights into how they can best manage their workplace and manage their facilities and operations and real estate and assets, and help them in their future direction.
Brilliant. And Sarah?
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Kilmartin. Might get a bit confusing on this call with two solutions. I work at Eptura within our customer insights team. So as Brian mentioned, we worked very closely on producing the report that was released earlier this year using our data, proprietary data, from all our solutions from 2024 and from speaking to global leaders as part of a survey across workplace, real estate, facilities and asset management.
Brilliant. And on to Simi, who's here from Mighty.
Hi, thank you, Sarah, and for having me here today. So I'm Simi Gandhi-Whitaker. I'm the MD of our Smart Workplaces business unit. And that comprises of four key pillars, which is from workplace consultancy and understanding our clients' strategic goals in workplace, to workplace technology, so whether it's BMS integrations, IoT solutions, and then to kind of help create those readiness, those workplace readiness spaces. So I also run the design and fit out area within Smart Workplaces. And then we kind of have a workplace management team where we support that ongoing embedded solution. So, not just kind of expecting us to just be able to adapt to, if a workplace has changed, being able to book it accurately, for example. So yeah, I've been at Mighty 4 years and I'm really looking forward to being here today.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. I'm really pleased to say we've got two client-side FMs because these are the people who are dealing sort of at the front end of all this. So if we start with Heather.
Hi, thank you. I'm Heather Nicholson. I am UK Head of FM for Seeker UK. I've been in the role just 6 days off 1 year, so I'm coming up to my anniversary now. And prior to me joining, Seeker had no strategic FM function. So it's been quite a challenge over the last year, and particularly because there's been no strategic FM function, there is no technology within Seeker at the moment to aid the facilities journey. So that's something that we're obviously working hard on, but that's challenging with the operational side of things, which myself and one member of my team, there's just two of us to cover the entire UK. We're having to deliver the operational side as well. So that's me.
Huge job, huge job. And last but definitely not least is Wayne. If you'd like to go.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me today. So I'm Wayne Young. I'm the head of FM for DB Cargo. We're a rail logistics business. I've been in post now for 2 years, and very similar to Heather, when I joined the business, there was no strategic FM in the business. So I'm very much in the same route as Heather in terms of building together what that looks like. Historically, I've worked in a number of businesses where I've kind of had that similar thing, and technology has been a big part of that. I've worked in FM for 15 years. I also chair the People Development SIG for IWFM. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. I wanted to go back to the reports and tell us a little bit, guys, about the sort of the main findings, because it'll help set the scene for this discussion, I think.
Um, the main the main finding I think for us, or the main insight that we got from
Yeah.
the report, was this thing called the what we've termed intelligent work tech value chain. And what we discovered, and what we see as being really important, is that many businesses, they want data analytics, they want AI, they want all of these different things. But unfortunately, it's not easy to do. And it's not easy to do because essentially everybody's data is disconnected, or people are working in silos. So everything is not connected together. So workplace experience, it's not connected to assets, assets not connected to corporate real estate. And so it's very difficult to build a picture. And what we say is you can create value within your organization increasingly by connecting these things together. So if you connect, um, your operational and software together, what you're going to do is you're going to generate more data. If you've got more data, then you've got more insight in which you can make better informed decisions. But it doesn't stop there. If you've got more data, then you've got something that AI can actually work with. And that can then give you much better insights and much better efficiencies, and make your businesses much more effective. So there's a beautiful chain that goes on, that if you connect it, you
Mm,
become more connected. And as you become more connected, you become more informed with all the data that you're getting. And as you become more informed, you can use that data to really exploit AI to the full. So you become more intelligent. And so there's this lovely value chain that happens, but it all comes down to being connected at the
yeah.
start.
Sharing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Simi, you're dealing with a, a wide range of clients and projects. Um, What main areas do you think are you advising clients that they need AI for? Because we know, I mean, Wynne and Heather already pointed out, they're trying to upscale their environment to get people to accept it. And anecdotally, a lot of FMs I talk to could say it's really difficult to persuade clients of the value of it.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I couldn't agree more with Brian. It's that
Mm,
interoperability and connection
mm,
that we need. Um, in order to give really meaningful insight. Okay, and I say that to clients all the time, and I don't envy Heather or Wayne as well in their roles. It is really hard. It takes a lot of investment as well. So Mighty has invested 160 plus million over the last 5 years in technology platforms and solutions, and we continue on this journey. So it isn't an easy task at all, but I think the key thing is having the right partners to support, right? So that really understand that transformational journey, that whilst things or systems and data sets aren't connected today, there is an opportunity to still use the data in a meaningful way in the short term, whilst the roadmap to connect that and get an ecosystem that gives a wider transformational knowledge base, should I say, to
mm,
make those meaningful decisions. But the way that we work with customers are, let's take a step back and kind of say, it's not just data for data's sake, is it? We hear this all the time, right? It's what is your workplace strategy? That's what I always ask
mm,
customers, right? So why do you need the data? And actually, how are you aligning the data sets to align with your workplace strategy. And then you can really start to find some meaningful insight. So whether it's, understanding our clients' comfort policies, understanding the well-being requirements. What are you doing in terms of supporting your employees on that journey? What are you doing in terms of linking that data with actually how you're transforming your estate? So, i.e., carrying out the day-to-day facilities operations. So we see this a lot. I think with regards to AI specifically, we did I've got a stat here in front of me actually. We did an annual NPS survey to around 1,000 customers, and the response on AI was 2/5 of those, so 62% believed it would have a big impact, right? However, only 15% could specify how. And as FMs, that's our job to give them that insight and say, listen, don't eat the elephant in one go. Let's help you understand what data sets you have today. Let's help you provide some data sets if you don't have any. And let's align your workplace strategy to kind of give you some meaningful insight. That's the way I always approach it.
Fab, that was really useful. I think if we go to Heather, who has already pointed out, that she's sort of at the bottom of a very large mountain. But you must be looking at digital solutions at the moment. And the other side of this question was, what are you using and do your current solutions, if any, fit the bill? I mean, where are you starting with all this?
Well, yeah, there is very little at the moment. And what I've discovered in the last sort of 12 months or so is that every department has their own thing going on. They've got their own systems.
Yeah.
Not just that, but each site has different systems. So it's 8 times, that's the number of sites we have, times 6 different departments that I'm having to deal with different types of data. Nothing talks to each other. Nothing is potentially integratable because nobody has thought like that. So we're very siloed, and that absolutely has to change. I'm very much on the start of the journey of trying to convince the powers that be that we need a CAFM system, and that really is the basics as far as FM is concerned, as we know. But that's where I think we have to start. I can't even begin to think about things like predictive maintenance and and how we would use AI without kind of being able to evidence the usefulness of tech within FM. So we have to go back to basics to be able to have that starting point, I think.
Wayne, what's your experience? I mean, obviously, as you said earlier, you've worked for a few organizations in this situation.
Yeah. I think whenever I look at technology, I always want to start with the question why and what. What are we hoping to get from it and why are we doing it? And that has been this process I've followed within DB Cargo when we're starting to look at this. So we are developed a little bit further and the board are signed up for technology solutions. We are actively talking to a number of people about what that looks like and ultimately what we want to get from it. And ultimately where we're at on that journey is looking at integration, because I think there's lots of technology in our business has historically been very good at working within silos and trying to use FM to pull all that data together, but also how we can develop for the future so that we can be more proactive and more preemptive in our delivery of FM across the estate. So yeah, those are the things that we're working on at the moment. The problem is there's lots of solutions out there.
Yeah.
It's about finding the right one for you.
Well, let's drill down a bit. I mean, Sarah, the sort of, if you were talking to clients, what do you think are the key AI tools? Because I know you guys supply quite a number of things from sort of workplace occupancy to looking after BMS. Where would you get these guys to start in terms of, right, what's your first sort of starting point? I know it's a huge question and it's very dependent on clients.
I think it very much leans into what Simi was talking about, what's your workplace strategy?
Yeah.
And then drilling down from there. I mean, within our research, we ask, where would you see the most value within using tech? And broadly, employee experience always comes up first, but it does need to start with, your strategy, and it needs to be a unified strategy. It can't just be from one functional department. It needs to be across the board, and that also helps deliver value because there is a huge focus on what's the value of tech. I mean, Wayne mentioned it. You have to be able to demonstrate value, and that has to lean into, what metrics are you seeing? What's the impact of the technology we're using rather than technology for technology's sake? But there are some great things you can do very, very quickly with it impacts your employee experience, for instance, by bringing people together in the office at the same time if they're working in a hybrid basis, by managing your asset maintenance. That can be fairly quick to implement as well.
Yeah. So that's a good starting point, isn't it? I mean, to ask, first of all, if I go to Simi and then back to Heather and Wayne, I mean, if you're talking to clients, is this efficiency productivity thing, or is it more making the workers happy? What is their priority, Simi, when you're talking to clients, or is it very dependent on their function?
It's both, right?
Mm,
It's both.
yeah.
I mean, the two are intrinsically linked nowadays. You can't, but before when you were just looking at facility
Mm,
management, it was purely, we would, as FMs, just look at it as assets,
yeah.
and optimizing assets and using predictive maintenance. But now it's kind of using that data analytics, bringing in all of it together from IoT solutions to BMS data to not only optimize the regimes,
Yeah.
the maintenance regimes, but also really understand how do you aggregate all of that that real-time data using AI to kind of ensure the environment is fit for purpose, ensuring the environment is also optimized. So not only do you have a really great workplace colleague experience, but you're optimizing the service and you're optimizing the energy whilst
Mm,
delivering that service. And I think it's really important that we as FMs don't silo those. It's very much intrinsically linked, and hence why I guess under the smart workplaces umbrella, it for me it feels like it's that story.
yeah.
It's not just about maintenance, it's the story around the why. Why are we doing it? And ultimately it's about optimizing the efficiency of the real estate whilst improving the colleague experience. Our clients
Yes.
spend a lot of money on expensive real estate and they want those to work efficiently, but their colleagues might have a different idea. So how do we marry the two up?
Oh, that is a very good point. I mean, Wayne and Heather, you're both nodding very ardently. Yeah, Heather, I mean, as I say, you're nearly a year into this role, and you're kind of starting from scratch. It's incredible, kind of. In a way, I suppose you could say it's quite good because you don't have to get rid of terrible legacy systems, but also,
Yeah, but I also have to,
yeah,
work with the challenges that,
yeah,
people are quite set in their ways. So, I mean, for me, efficiency absolutely is up there. A team of two covering, 8
mm,
sites, is just insane to anyone that really thinks about it. So, that's really important. But I think, like for me at this moment in time, having clean data that I can use to evidence the need to do X, Y, Z is absolutely crucial at this stage of the journey. So, you know, the business is really focused on our customers. It is very, very customer focused, which is great, and it's the way that it should be. But it's almost kind of, from what I'm seeing, to the detriment of our staff and the workplace that we provide. So, if there is any kind of money floating around, it will be invested into things that will improve the customer experience.
yeah,
So what I'm starting with is a building at our head office where one floor got refurbished last year. The other floors haven't yet been refurbished. I'm taking the people that work on that floor and I'm surveying exactly the same questions to the staff that work on different floors. And I'm going to use a wonderful AI tool. I'm using AI to pull out kind of key themes
yeah,
to be to compare the difference in terms of kind of like, efficiency, productivity, and generally how staff feel. Are they happy to come to work in the morning? I can guarantee that there's going to be a very, very stark difference between the two. And
Yeah.
from there, I can evidence, the importance of providing this great workplace experience for people, and why it's important to do so.
Yes. And Wayne, is that similar? Well, obviously you're not starting from zero as Heather is.
Yeah, I think the reality is efficiency is always going to be really important as a
Mm.
client-side FM. That's the reason why we exist. We're here to create efficiencies in FM
Yeah.
that adds value to the business and not just being seen as that cost center that costs.
Mm.
So we've got to find those efficiencies, and I think technology is where it's going to be. I also, though, think that if FM and workplace don't embrace technology, the world is still embracing it. We're just going to get left behind when we become an operation that is dated and doesn't keep up with the trends, etc., etc. So I think it's really important that we do the value piece, which
Yeah.
is the efficiencies and value add, that kind of type stuff. But likewise, we've got to move with the trends. We've got to keep with the times because that's how we stay relevant to industry and business.
Absolutely. I've got a list here actually, in terms of the solutions that are available, which I got, I talked it through with Upture previously. And there's four main ones I've got here. Optimizing maintenance with predictive data analytics. So that's for maintenance. Enhanced real estate management to improve asset utilization. Automated visitor management to enhance security, and efficient work order management for operational costs and productivity. Brian, sorry, I'm throwing this back at you. If you're talking to clients, what do you find they are most willing to invest in? And I know this is a long question. And is it all in the remit of the FM? Because we need to talk about the silo thing, because all those tools are covering other areas. They're covering corporate real estate, they're covering HR, and obviously IT.
Oh. That's a great question. The problem with digital transformation is it's so often a human problem.
Yeah.
And it's about getting people to align across
Mm.
silos on a common purpose, which will, bring added value to the business. And so stakeholder management is as critical as the technology that you're going to deploy because you need to bring the organization with you.
Yeah.
In addition, I think I feel really sorry for Wayne and Heather. God, I feel sorry for you. It's just we all know what the answer is. That's the
Mm.
frustrating thing. We all know that how we need to solve this. It's the actual doing that's the real hard part. And I think one of the things that we found, within the report is that there's just not, the ROI models around that can prove the value of what you
Mm.
get to do. So you can
Yeah.
actually make the business case so that people can go, you know what, if we did that, then this is going to save us this amount of money. So it's definitely worth the investment in this technology to do so. And I think that's the critical thing. And so when you ask what are people wanting to do, I think everybody wants to do everything. They want to optimize their real estate
Yeah.
at the same time as providing an amazing employee experience and one that's modern. If I turn up to work, I shouldn't have to book a desk that I always book. You should just book the desk for me. Or if I turn up for work and it knows my colleagues are in, it should
Mm.
guess which day I go in. This is just modern way of thinking. And so that encourages not only a better employee experience, it also encourages people to collaborate more. And we know that if people collaborate more, they're more productive. So it makes so much sense for the business because it improves their productivity. But also, once you start knowing where everybody is, you go,
Yeah.
well, I can close off floor or sublet it because I don't need it anymore because I can actually rationalize it like this and also have the same space experience. Sorry. So yeah, so that I think, and then I think asset. Um, connecting assets together, I think is a
Yeah.
really fundamental way forward, because it's when you have sensors on assets, it's when you know where assets are in building information modeling, it's when they're all connected and people have mobile apps so that the technicians can service and input data straight away. When all of that's connected, it becomes much more efficient and much more productive. Connect that to employee experience, and so
Yeah.
employees can actually submit service requests themselves. And suddenly you're really motoring and you're providing a very, very seamless, frictionless, but also highly efficient system.
That is a great synopsis. Simi, you were going to say something there?
I vehemently agree with Brian.
Excellent.
The reason why I'm smiling because it's music to my ears. Everything you said is everything we're doing, but except for the ROI piece, right? No offense to Wayne and Heather, but customers spend such a lot of time making decisions. And in your guys' cases, right, it's because the pot of money, there's no, gold at the end of the road, or whatever the saying is, right? So the pot of money that you have to spend has to really stick. But what we are finding more and more is we do have to provide ROIs for our customers. And the minute, and also what we do is proof of concepts, right? Like I said, I'm a really big fan of starting small.
Right.
And
Nice.
that's how we've kind of grown over the time. But I've got a customer that really adopted 4 years ago with us, or maybe longer, sensor technology. As a result of that, they've reduced their estate by a quarter. And then they've invested in other real estate to link back to Brian's point, that whole life workplace experience. So they're using the money to reinvest, to redesign the spaces and ensure that actually they are attracting people back into those spaces, but in a much more reduced and efficient geography. And that's working really well for them. We've got other clients where we've had to produce, like you were talking about, Brian, connecting assets, right? We've had to do proof of concepts where we can say, actually, by doing X, Y, and Z, you can reduce X amount of energy, saving, I'm talking thousands of pounds per month. And therefore, then they get their ROI with, in that proof of concept was less than a year, 8 months, and therefore then allowed them to reinvest and they gave them the business case. So I was just smiling because I think it's really important that customers do take this seriously, our clients take this seriously, but just do it within the parameters that you can.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Wayne, like you say, will be left behind.
Yeah. I mean, Heather and Wayne, of these tools, what ones do you find the easiest sell, as it were, to the management? What are they looking at? If you say, oh, it's to we might be able to cut down real estate, is that the big sort of tick? Or is it, no, we're going to be able to optimize our maintenance, we're going to be able to cut down on the cost of running the premises? Is there areas where you're going to get a yes quicker?
Yeah, for us, it's about lowering those running costs. Whether that would then, as Simi rightly said, gets reinvested back into kind of the workplace. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, running chemical manufacturing sites costs millions of pounds. So anything that we can do to try and save on costs is good. Working more efficiently as well. I mean, I see so many areas that we can make efficiencies in, but it's getting buy-in that is the main problem for us. And maybe that's because I've not been here long enough to be able to kind of establish myself. Maybe it's that people don't really understand what facilities management does, because we haven't existed within this business before. But the problem that I'm faced with is all this operational stuff that has to be done. I don't have time to do that piece of work. Getting stuff across the line with our senior managers absolutely has to include that ROI information. There is no way it's getting across the line without that. And if service providers can't give that to me, then I have to spend time trying to work that out manually. And I'm not great with numbers. It's not my strength. So, I'm looking to work with suppliers that can help me with that. And proof of concepts, absolutely, Simi, you're right. If I can, say, look, this is, a very similar type of business. This is what happened here. This is what could happen here, and then some. That helps us get the case across.
Wayne, what's your experience in that area? Do you
It's
find
very similar to what's been discussed, right? I
Mm.
think the ROI stuff is huge. Every time I look at this technology, it's about what does the ROI look like? And I think to Simi, Heather's, and Brian's point, we've got to start small. You've got to get those quick wins in that you can then build upon, and it's all about that trust piece.
Mm.
And as an in-house FM function, it's about giving trust to the business that what we're talking about. We kind of do know what we're talking about, and we are professionals in what we do. And it's about building that trust with the executive board, so that when you go to them and say, look, actually, we spent £2,000 on some technology, it gave us this, the ROI, it delivered.
Yeah.
Actually, now can we spend £20,000 on some more technology? They can see that you've already delivered. So it's really important. So for me, out of those points, the quick win stuff is the important stuff right now. So the proactive stuff, the how you can optimize here and now, the asset stuff, all that is really important though, because that's the stuff my CFO in particular is looking at, because that's the stuff they want to know in 10 years' time. Is the business still going to be healthy, or do I have to spend a lot of money on our asset? And that's where the value add of technology, AI, and the current AI and technology that's out there can really start powering. It's pulling all that stuff together to create one big FM strategy.
Great. Well, we've talked about kind of the benefits stuff. Now we've got to talk about the huge issue which Brian mentioned at the beginning of this, which is the fact that you have got a lot of stakeholders, and you've a lot of companies have a lot of systems. And I've covered a little bit of HR in the past, and they have, I mean, you could sort of line a football field with the number of systems they use in terms of the people management, but it's all cross-functional. So Sarah and Brian, what are you finding that is the biggest barriers? Because all these multiple dashboards, I mean, what are the main issues that people have with this?
I think you mentioned multiple dashboards. That's multiple sets of data, multiple sets that can be analysed. And there is the saying of data paralysis. We absolutely see that where FM has too much data and doesn't actually know what to look at first. And so it is, taking a step back and, looking at what do I actually want to get from this? What's, like we were saying earlier, a quick win, because that is a major problem. Having, sometimes it's not having enough data, but very often it can be having lots and too much data and analysing that data and having the right people to analyse that data. You need to be specialist at doing that as well. It's not something that everybody can do. Brian, I don't know whether you've got anything to add.
Yeah, no. The thing I would add is that one of the things we found in the workplace index was, a lot of businesses had quite high numbers of people doing their data analytics. And the reason for that was because it was so fragmented. That does require a lot of people, because you've got to you've got to get all that data, you've got to standardize it, normalize it, and then you've got to put it into one place and then take that out and analyze it. The problem is that most businesses have moved on by the time you've done that, because it takes 2-3 months to pull all that together, because they're busy and everybody's busy doing other things and stuff. So it's about the speed as much as about the ease with which you can parse the data, because modern day businesses, they want to be in a board meeting and go, right, okay, the data's telling us, let's pivot and do this. And that allows businesses to react, and then allows them to react quicker than their competitors, which is where they gain the advantage.
Yeah. Just a reminder, actually, if anybody's got questions to ask them, we have had one in about IT department being reluctant to sort of sign off on other solutions. I mean, Simi, in your experience, you're dealing with clients. I mean, your conversations are obviously with the FMs, but they must have to bring in other departments, or how does it work in practice?
Oh no, our conversations are with the workplace
Yeah,
team, FMs, with the IT infosec
yeah,
teams,
the whole lot.
sustainability teams. You'll
Mm,
find that actually departments within our clients' teams are working very closely together, and actually, I think thankfully for us as all of us in FM, this is becoming C-suite discussion, right? Because it all has an
yeah,
impact on people. So the CPOs are interested, it has an impact on costs. So the CFO is interested, right? So yeah, but it can be tricky to
mm,
get those areas of implementation over the line and time consuming, right? So I think it was Brian that was saying is we have to be quick,
mm,
um, but also our clients have to be quicker, I would say,
yeah,
because sometimes implementation discussions due to InfoSec can take up to 12 months in some cases, right? And these are small deployments. Completely understand why. You can see it. We see it in the press all the time, right? And it's actually getting worse.
mm,
And there are many, many discussions. We, FM partners, have to also be ready for those discussions. We have to have the right people at
yeah,
those tables. So long gone are the days where the account directors and business unit leaders like myself would have it. I need to have a
mm.
team behind me that is able to technically and compliantly give our customers confidence. So yeah, there's lots of conversations across the piece.
Well, I
But also,
suppose, yeah, sorry, go on.
no, I was just going to say that the other point is that we shouldn't be trying to sell solutions to our clients anymore, right? It's all about, because many of our clients have already implemented their own solutions, whether it's technology, whether it's,
Mm,
workplace strategy, whatever it is. It's that key point on, I think Sarah talked about it, is having the right SMEs to give them that insight. And again, that's where we like to add value. It's not the hardware or the software, it's let's tell you what you can do with that data. And I think that's really important as well, is because many customers have deployed and done big rollouts of technology, spent a huge amount of money, and then said, actually, I want to rip them out because they're not giving me any value. But that's because they didn't have a service provider that can, or an SME that could overlay what that data means for them. So I think it's things
yeah.
like that to think about.
That is a very good point. And also, I suppose, I mean, Brian, do you find as well, are people nervous about investing in tools that they think are going to be upgraded, or, do they feel, oh, this is is it a it sounds off, but is it a long-term sell? You did advise people, yeah, don't worry, this will be upgraded as you go, because AI is moving so fast. Anecdotally, in another discussion I was in, that was a big concern at the client side, because they're not techie people. They're scared of investing, as Simi said, in the wrong thing.
I think that's definitely a
Yeah.
worry. I think also part of that worry is
Mm,
because people don't necessarily have the AI skill sets
yeah.
within organizations or necessarily understand how AI works. And that's not being patronizing or anything. It's just,
Yeah.
it's not, a lot of it's a new thing for a lot of people. So it's like, how does that actually work? And there's a lot of hype out there, which
Mm,
I think doesn't help in any sense of way because people think, oh, AI just solves my problem.
yeah.
It's like, and what I see happening a lot is people go, oh, they put AI in the middle and go, look, these things that it can do. But that's not how AI works. There's different levels of AI. There's AI that you can have on a chatbot, but that's not as sophisticated as AI that you can have for diagnostic tools. But that's not as sophisticated as AI for predictive tools. And then that's not as sophisticated as AI that you can have that can actually prescribe solutions. And then that's not as sophisticated
God.
as
Yeah.
AI that can just literally automate everything.
Mm.
I think it's about a poor understanding of what AI can do. And the problem with it is, and it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, is that about being connected and getting the data, is that if you don't connect your software together, you're limited with what your AI can do. So you're probably limited to chatbots and maybe
Yeah.
diagnostics.
Mm.
But if you connect everything together, then you can probably upgrade your AI capability to predictive. And if you keep linking and pulling all the data points together, you've got better data. So therefore you can do prescriptive. And now automated, that's sort of like, in the future. But I think it's about businesses really understanding what the capability of AI is,
Yeah.
and more importantly, what the capability of AI is given their current situation, and not then therefore rushing off and going, oh, we'll get this AI, because it won't work until
Mm.
you've actually sorted out some of the fundamentals. So it's a very staged approach, within the AI world, I think, and I think that's where the misunderstandings coming in,
Yeah.
um, and that causes quite a few problems, I think.
That's a very good point. And I think for you guys, Wayne and Heather, as client side FMs, it's almost like in terms of the data analytics, you need to find out what the question is that you want to ask before you get the AI to do the work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, that's the biggest thing.
Mm.
I've got this huge thing in front of me. What do the business want me to focus on the most? What's the most important aspect of that? And is that where we're going to invest? And what does that mean for the other areas? And,
Yeah.
it's just that there's so much to kind of unpick before like we even start asking those questions. So yeah, it's a tricky one.
Wayne, what's your
I was,
view?
I was, I was going to say, I think it goes back to what I said at the start in terms of you've got to start with the why.
Mm.
What is the purpose of what we're trying to use technology for? Um, why are we implementing technology? I think the challenge that we always see is there is so much data out there, and even if you haven't got a data system, there is still data being gathered around you all the time that is useful
Mm.
data. It's how you want to use data to drive efficiency, effectiveness, all the things we're trying to do as an FM team into the business. But you've got to start with the why. You've got to start with what's our focus, what's our vision.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk a bit more about the siloed things because that does sound like a huge issue. Now, I go back many decades and I can remember when the IT department used to ring a little bell to go in to see them. So they've always been a bit, don't touch my, don't. And Simi, I know say that you work across these departments, but it must be like herding cats sometimes with respect to your clients.
You know what? I've seen a huge change in the last 4 years, in all honesty. I mean, dare I say it, but we over here as business units didn't talk to our IT department, but actually that made zero sense. So I come along and go, why? Because I
Mm.
would know that whatever solutions, client-facing solutions I'm producing or finding, that not only are they credible, and so we test them on ourselves, but also they're safe and they're in line with our IT policy. So I'm kind of one of those break barriers and silos. I just think nothing's going to happen on its own. So you got to all talk to one another. And I have seen that a
Mm.
lot, not only within my team, where we are much closer, the IT department and our CEO, CTIO, and everybody. It's all about what is our technology strategy, what is our AI strategy, what is the governance around AI implementation, and then that comes out to business, and then vice versa. What does the business need from
Yeah.
And therefore, when we can talk really accurately and robustly like that to our clients, that confidence automatically comes. And then therefore, we're really clear at the start of, actually, we need these departments to be working together. So, we have some clients that are at the start of the journey, and we have many clients that are kind of think they know best. So that's all good as well. And it's just adjusting our ways and working with those clients. But also it's that literacy piece, isn't it? It's like
Yes. Yeah.
that education piece, don't just kind of assume everybody knows what AI is. We'd all probably have some different definition. So I think it's breaking it down and simplifying, but also we as FM, so my team, for example, we have to educate our own people as well, on how to eloquently use AI, whether it's, Copilot, for example, or, generative AI ourselves, or the AI that we implement with clients. We've just launched actually today, I think it's in the press, our new AI Academy, which is our AI apprenticeship with Corndale,
Yeah.
in Microsoft, and it's also with Imperial College. So we've got to keep moving at a pace. You can't just stand still. We've got to educate.
Well, that's the thing. The educate thing's interesting. And I think, as Brian and Sarah have said, what you guys are dealing with then, and when you're dealing directly either via a facilities provider like Simi or with client side, you must have to deal with a lot of stakeholders. And how can you say, well, that system you're using is only giving you a piece of the picture? Do you have to talk people out of continuing or installing something that's going to work in parallel with what your system's doing rather than integrate it so that they can get a clearer picture of what's happening in the business? Again, long-winded question.
I think it depends on where an organization is on the journey,
Mm,
and it depends on where they want to be, because not
yeah.
everybody wants to be completely cutting edge and has that ambition to be there.
Mm,
And it's about understanding that, but as providers of workplace technology, that's also part of our role,
yeah.
is that kind of consultancy approach of saying, this is who you need to have involved, and this is the questions you should be asking. Governance, and you mentioned it, governance, infosec often comes up a little bit too late in the conversation, and they should be brought in earlier. So, your partnerships are kind of so important in this journey, and not just when you're looking for new technology, but also with your current technology providers, is revisiting those conversations as well, and making sure, because stakeholders have changed over the last 2 years. 2 years ago, we were speaking to different people we are now, which is often workplace technology leaders, and that role didn't necessarily exist to the breadth that it does today.
That is a really, really good point. In fact, I'm just going to go to a couple of questions and then we'll finish off with sort of doing a bit of a predictive stuff for the future. Um, Somebody did ask, how do I get my team skilled up to using these systems? A lot of them are nervous of AI. Now, Simi, you've just mentioned this is great, this new academy. You mentioned, Sarah, you've actually got people who've got that in their role. But, with respect to the FM sector, there are a lot of old school people out there who are still using spreadsheets. So we have, as Wayne and I have discussed in the past, how on earth do we get people up to that level where they know what it is that they need in AI and they understand, as Brian said, what the technology is going to do for them? I mean, Wayne, you've been involved in some of this, haven't you, via WFM?
Yeah, and yeah, I think in amongst many things that
Mm,
FM is struggling with, I think there's a skills gap around
yeah.
front house FMs having technical knowledge, which
Mm,
includes AI and technology use. And I think as IWFM people development SIG, we're going to address that, and there's going to be some stuff that's coming out, some lunch and learns and stuff that'll address that directly. Interestingly, I hadn't thought about how impactful technology is on that as well. So maybe we need to look at how we can add that into this. Also, I do think there's a lot to it. I think it's a developing technology all the time, and we've got to keep aligned with it so we can sell that correctly to our businesses.
yeah. I mean, Heather, obviously you're starting with a company that didn't have an FM a year ago. So, but in terms of you working as an FM and the people you're dealing with, are you saying that the people are realizing that we can't do this I hate half-assed is the wrong word, but we can't just use spreadsheets to to monitor our assets. We need to invest.
I think there's a real mix across the
Mm,
business, depending on who you talk to,
yeah.
the role. We've got some people who have been with the company like more than 20 odd years. They're very much, this is the way we do it. It's worked for us. So, why should we change that? So there's a piece that we need to do around kind of, taking them on the
Yeah.
journey. But on the flip side, we've got other people who are just like, yep, 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 let's invest, let's drive this. And that is great to see. It's really refreshing. Um, I think, you know, I think my challenge is with the former of the two groups. And they hear AI and they go, oh, I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah.
They think that robots are going to come in and take over the world. And that's not what we're talking about. But I don't have time to educate them. And so how do I, educate them in, what is AI in terms of what we're trying to achieve? So that's my challenge. And I guess my question back to the panel, how do I do this?
Yeah. Yeah, how do you do it? I mean, Brian, you mentioned some of this earlier and Simi as well. Starting small, like almost the eating an elephant analogy, I suppose you'd call
Yeah,
it.
yeah, no, it's the elephant was in my head at the moment.
Yeah.
I think the danger with all of this is everybody tries to eat the whole elephant and then
Mhm.
fails. And the problem with that is
Mm.
that then everybody goes, it doesn't work. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, we know it works. We all know it's right. And yeah, I think, it's really interesting listening to Wayne and Heather. I think a lot of this is, start small, but it's almost like walking together into the future, but doing it in a step-by-step process.
Mm.
Because by doing that, you're going to set everybody up for success. And once people see success,
Yeah.
they're encouraged by it, and then they want to take another step, and then they want to take another step. And before you know it, you've done the whole thing. And it's been a painless process. But I think what happens is everybody just jumps in and goes, right, let's do it. And then it becomes very painful, but it doesn't work. And it fails. And I think that's why, that isn't the right way to do it. So yeah, the walk together into the future, step by step.
Somebody actually asked a good question about Jonathan Speed. He said, is there a standard or ISO format type document which supports or enables the use of AI? For example, he says ISO 55,000 for asset management. I mean, that might be something which would maybe comfort, because FMs are used to using standards in their sort of in the compliance meeting standards. Maybe that would be something. I don't know. Is there anything that they can look at this stage that would say, well, if you adhere to that standard, then you're on the right lines? Or is it maybe more down to the expertise of people like Eptura and smart workplaces?
I don't know. Let me just check on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Um, I personally don't know of a standard.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if that comes, but however, don't quote me on that because there may be one.
Yeah.
But what I would say on the education piece is simplify. I think comms is huge, is right. So it doesn't matter whether you're a great big giant like Mighty, where you continuously communicate to your staff and your employees around the pace of technology, and you have to use multi-channels, right? Because we've got what 60,000, 70,000 frontline staff. So not everyone's going to read an email. So we have to use different engagement tools and apps to do that. Or whether you're a small business, but I think comms is really important to
Yeah.
educate staff members. But I also think there's so many free tools out there. So like I say, we've obviously developed into creating this AI apprenticeship because we are a fast moving business. However, there's lots of free tools. Like Microsoft have loads of free tools. There are other technology providers out there on the market. But do you know what I mean? Microsoft would love me for giving them the free publicity here.
They just don't get enough, do they?
Yeah. But there are so many free online educational tools. So
Yeah.
point those, because you're all going to be using some kind of technology partner within your businesses. So point them to those free tools, or engage with those service partners to help point those.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of, some of it's self-education, some of it's online webinars, I think comms is very, very important, because Wayne said we're going to be left behind. So it doesn't matter how early into the journey you are, Heather, for example, AI is here. If you look at any McKinsey type report, what is a top priority for a CEO today? AI is within that top 7. So we have to think like that.
Good question actually came in from Andrew Hibbert of Parento. Hi, Andrew. He wants to know, and this is actually good if we do this question and then just finish off with a sort of a chat about future. He says, what AI do the panel think could be practically implemented today? I'm seeing some great strides in productivity with basic AI across departments like HR, finance, and CAFAM. So Brian, if you're going right, what is the sort of really practical, maybe a practical example of maybe of a client, you don't have to
I
give
can
their
give you
details.
some, I mean, the thing about AI, as I said before, is it does operate on lots of different levels.
Yeah.
Within our own software, we have things called intelligent, features like intelligent booking, which knows, when your team members are in and can make suggestions and when the best time to go into the office is. That helps collaboration. There's things like, facial recognition, for visitor management, which makes that incredibly efficient. So there are lots of little things that AI can do, and even on sort of diagnosing data
Mm,
that are, to what want of a better word, the small steps.
yeah.
And again, they can demonstrate the benefit and the productivity level benefits of those of using AI, and then you can just build on that. So I think there is, yeah, within, I think the thing about a lot of AI is that within individual solutions, there's kind of AI that you can do, but then there's AI that can go across solutions that can, really, really help, the whole business operations. But you can't jump to that until you've done the smaller stuff. So you kind of need to build and build and build and build.
Excellent. Right, we're going to finish off with the last sort of predictive. You can't talk about AI without saying what's it going to be like in the future. It's got to be done. So I'd like to kind of go around the room and see what everyone thinks are the best, the principal benefits for FMs in future advances in AI and digital technology. I know it's a huge question, and we're going to have real differences. And Wayne and Heather would just like things to run better. But if we start with Sarah, and then Simi, then Wayne, then Heather, and then finish off with you, Brian, that would be great.
Oh gosh, it's a big
Put you on the spot
question.
there.
Yeah. I think probably for me, it
Mm,
would be leveraging AI to understand and predict use of real estate, which seems very basic, but being able to predict against an ever-changing workforce, for instance, so understanding demographics, understanding cultural differences,
mm,
understanding, for instance, how you're hiring, and then making AI produce a forecast and a view and more of an individualized approach. That for me, I don't think that's years out. I think that's fairly kind of probably, a year or 18 months out. But that kind of forecasting is for me where we're looking to with AI.
brilliant. Simi, you must be, I mean, you've got a whole responsibility for smart workplaces. I mean, are the robots coming?
They're here. We've got them on this call, like it's
Yeah,
I
sorry
think
about that.
no, they're here. I think it's perception, isn't it?
Mm,
We should help with perception. Like you say, people think, oh, I'm going to be out of a job.
yeah.
And so I think the biggest thing is assuming
Mm,
everything's predictive. Everything is reducing downtime, improving and optimizing workplaces. I think it's just basic as freeing up people to create and do high impact work, and
Yeah.
using really, really effectively. And I think that's what's exciting for me.
Right, Heather, what's your 5-year plan for AI?
So yeah, I think I completely agree with what Simi said. Being able to free up time to for people.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I've said several times during this webinar, I'm dragged into operational stuff. It'd be absolutely amazing if there was some sort of magic wand I could wave to like help with that, to free up my time to be able to concentrate on the strategy and actually write something about a 5-year AI strategy into the FM strategy.
Excellent. Wayne?
Um, for me, right now, it's about these quick wins. What can we do
Mm.
to get technology running in our business and get it trusted, get people looking at it as a viable solution for our business, and then looking at how we can then utilize it as it's growing, as it's developing, as technology surpasses. We all know there's a technology shortage or skills gap shortage within our sector. And
Mm.
actually, how can we use some technology to fill those gaps, free up my time, free up my guys' time, and just deliver the better service for our business?
Fab. And Brian, if you want to sort of give us maybe a very brief overview of what you guys are looking at in terms, you don't have to give away anything too much, you're up from your R&D, but what you're sort of
Oh,
predicting.
I tell you where, I think
Mm.
at the moment, the world of work is a one-to-many experience.
Mm.
You go in, the place is heated to a standard temperature. Imagine a world where it's a one-to-one experience, where when you book a meeting room to do a webinar, it actually knows what temperature you like. And so it presets that temperature. So you walk in and it's set at the temperature you like. You then have the webinar. It's already got that lined up for you. AI for me is, the great Steve Jobs quote about, animals being humans being inefficient when they walk, but as soon as they put on a bicycle, they're very efficient. AI is a bicycle for the mind. It'll just make us work so much better. And I think where we will go is, much more into the one-to-one rather than to one-to-many experience.
That is a brilliant way of finishing off. Thank you so much, everyone. There was quite a few questions came in which we didn't have time to answer, so I'll collate them and pass them around the panel for their views. Also, if you've missed any of this and you'd like to rewatch, we'll be posting it up on our website, so you can click in and watch at any stage. Thanks again to everybody, to Brian, Sarah, Simi, Heather, and Wayne, and thanks for a very enjoyable discussion.